Facebook says Trump will stay banned for now. Biden back suspending vaccine patents, and a pair of major milestones in the new space race. Thursday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Thursday, May 6th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
How's my favorite Hall of Famer doing?
Is it me? It couldn't
it's
possibly
you.
be
Okay,
me.
a couple follow-up questions from our conversation yesterday. Now, when you got inducted into your high school Hall of Fame, did you get a plaque or some sort of trophy? And was your picture put on the wall at the high school?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
I don't. Okay, so it was put on the wall. I am not 100% sure if it still is there. I don't believe that I got a plaque, but I got a huge sign. I think it was like 5 by 7 or 5. It was just this enormous thing of my high school yearbook photo.
Wow.
Yeah, and my husband would like carry it, insisted that we bring it back to the apartment. I don't know where it is now, though.
Something I bet that got lost in the move. Well, one day we're going to make a field trip to your high school because I need a picture of you standing in front of the Jill Wagner Hall of Fame plaque.
So really quickly, there was one of our former colleagues who no longer works here. I remember I was chatting with him and I said something like, "Oh, I have to go to my old high school tonight because I'm getting inducted into the Hall of Fame." And he was like, "Oh, for what?" And I was like, well, just, like my career and stuff. Like he couldn't comprehend. He looked at me and he's like, is this a joke? But like, what did you hit? You assume it's for like a hitting the most home runs or something. Anyhow.
For being sweet.
It brought me back down to reality. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Carlo, let's get to some news here. Facebook's oversight board upholding the ban on former President Trump for now, but then they punted this decision on whether to permanently ban him back to Facebook executives. So the board said the decision to remove Trump in the wake of the Capitol riot was justified, but that an indefinite ban is not appropriate because there are no rules on the books to allow for such an open-ended suspension. So Mark Zuckerberg now has 6 months to make the final call. You can't make this up, Carlo.
I don't know. I find this so hilarious. The whole purpose of creating this oversight board, this sort of like internal Supreme Court, the whole point of it was so that they could deflect blame, right, from Zuckerberg and from Facebook executives on these big controversial moderation decisions. And now the first controversial decision, this thing just throws it back at him. I mean, you couldn't write it. I don't know what else to say. It's so funny.
On to the latest pandemic developments. This is a big one. The White House has changed its position and now supports waiving intellectual property rights for the coronavirus vaccines. So this could help, in theory, get more shots to places in the world that desperately need them. So the U.S. and other developed nations in the World Trade Organization had been opposed to suspending those IP protections on concerns that they would impact the pharma companies that make the vaccines. But now they say that they are going to support the waiver. The WTO requires unanimous approval, and the EU is still largely opposed. So the devil's going to be in the details here. Many are cheering the reversal from the White House on the grounds that we have to take extreme measures to end the pandemic in places like South America and India. The other side of this, though, is that these are not easy to make. So, by the way, the Moderna shares, Pfizer shares, just plummeting yesterday on word of this. But the other thing is that it takes a while. So even if you're all for getting the vaccine to places like India that currently don't really have a good supply, some argue the better thing is to just make Moderna and Pfizer produce more vaccines. That'll be quicker than having to get these factories up and running, and then they would have to do testing as well. So it could be 2023 before you essentially see that. And then there's also the question of fairness. Is that fair?
Right, exactly. And it's not a silver bullet by any means. I mean, I think it's good. Like in my mind, anything we can do to help get this thing done is I'm for it. I mean, remember what Jonas Salk said? He was the guy who created the polio vaccine. He was asked by Edward Murrow on NBC, who owns the patent to the polio vaccine? And he replied famously, well, the people. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun? That's a great quote, and I just think it'd be nice to get that sort of sense of altruism here. But I mean, to your point, the companies like Pfizer and Moderna, they're arguing that the bigger issue is this global scarcity of ingredients and the supply chain bottlenecks. Those are the things they say that are really keeping the vaccine momentum from getting to where we need it. And the waiving the IP protection is just going to make it harder for them to innovate going forward. I don't know if I necessarily buy that. I think there's plenty of incentive to make life-saving drugs. Even if you don't necessarily have these IP protections. But they do have a point, like that you can't just wave a magic wand and increase the supply of these. These are like really complex, formulas, right? But again, I mean, we've been saying for how long, right? This should be a global Manhattan project. Like Pfizer should be sending scientists to India and Brazil if that's what it takes. If they need to expand their production facilities here, let's give them money to do that. Like whatever it takes, right? Whatever we got to do. If we have to release more of our stockpile, like I said, let's airdrop it into India, right? I mean, whatever we can do, let's be done. Let's be done with this pandemic.
And meanwhile, Carlo, Moderna says a single shot of its vaccine given as a booster shows really good efficacy, including against some of these variants. These are early stage trial results that have not been peer reviewed, but strong evidence that if and when we need booster shots, they'll be there. They're testing a few different things. So they're testing a smaller dose of the original vaccine. They're testing a smaller dose of a new type of formula that has that takes into account some of these new variants. So they're testing like three different options, but all seem to be pretty effective.
I mean, we got to get to a mindset here where, like, we're going to need boosters for this. And this, the COVID vaccine is going to be basically an industry unto itself. I mean, that's basically what Pfizer said in its earnings the other day. Like, this thing is, because we're not going to reach herd immunity, almost certainly, there's going to be demand, for boosters and for new shots for these variants going forward. So again, all the more reason why we got to ramp up supply and production facilities and whatever else we need. Now, I don't know if you caught the Tucker Carlson Misinformation Hour on Fox News last night. Sometimes I like to check in just to see what the most influential cable news host is telling his audience. And he has been on a tear lately about, why can't we question the vaccines? But last night he really took it to a new level. He was making this point on his show, and I'm only mentioning this again because this guy is extremely influential, right? Like, he is the most watched cable news program. What he says goes a long way. So it's important to refute when he says stuff that is nonsense, like he did last night. So he made this point last night that 4,000 people have died almost since getting the coronavirus vaccine, quoting Tucker Carlson. What is happening now, for whatever reason, is not even close to normal. It's not even close to what we see in previous years with previous vaccines. So this is so ridiculously, egregiously wrong and such nonsense. To say this on primetime television to millions of already skeptical viewers, I mean, there's not even a word to reflect what he's doing here. I mean, Jill, 8,000 people in this country die every day, right? Regardless of COVID. Right. That 8,000 people die. So of course, some vaccinated people are going to die, especially when a lot of them are old, right? I mean, I hate to be so blunt, but that's what old people do. They die. That's part of life. This would be like saying, well, a lot of the people who died in the last month drank a soda in the days before they died. So why can't we ask questions about what Coca-Cola is putting in their sodas? It's unconscionable. And the fact is, we all know that if Donald Trump was still the president, Tucker Carlson and the rest of these people would be promoting these vaccines as the greatest thing since sliced bread. We'd have 80% uptake in this country. We'd be on our way to herd immunity because all the people who have gotten vaxxed, they'd still be getting vaccinated. Plus, a big chunk of these Trump people would also be doing it because they'd be told by people like Tucker Carlson that it's the right thing to do. It is absurd that this has become a partisan thing. Tucker Carlson should be absolutely ashamed of himself. And Fox News, I don't know, treason, frankly.
It is incredible that there's still this platform. It's incredible that Fox News is allowing this to go on. I'm just looking on Twitter, and doctors left and right are coming out. One, Craig Spencer, an ER doctor in New York City. Hi, Tucker Carlson. So you're spreading dangerous and deadly lies about COVID vaccine on your show nightly. But I think you know that. If you'd like to have a real discussion about the vaccines, send me a message and I'd happily come on the show. I don't get it.
It's just about instilling fear. I don't know what it is. Aren't these people Americans? Aren't they patriots? Don't we all want this to be over?
I do wonder if Tucker Carlson has been vaccinated, and his
sure
family.
Well,
I mean, I'm sure that they have.
Yes.
I mean, okay. A federal judge has overturned the national eviction moratorium put in place under the Trump administration. The judge ruled that the CDC overstepped its power in enacting the moratorium, which was extended by President Biden through June. The Justice Department plans an appeal and has requested an emergency stay that would keep the moratorium in place for now. But the ruling adds to the confusion for millions of tenants who have been behind on rent during the pandemic, as well as the landlords who have been housing them.
Also, I do want to just get this on the record in terms of just reopenings that we've been talking about. So New York City, we've noted this week, said most businesses coming back to full capacity in 2 weeks. It's still going to be a few months before Broadway theaters reopen their doors. The theater industry now planning to start full capacity performances on September 14th, so a week or two after Labor Day. So they're just going to give the show producers time to sort of market and advertise to get their productions in order, get the actors back. But this is big, right? Broadway huge for New York City's economy, which is in turn huge for the national economy. And we got to get tourists back to the Big Apple. So if you're planning to come see a show in New York, which you should be, after September, it sounds like you'll be good to go.
And please get the vaccine if you're going to come here.
Yes. Yes.
But that's just it. It's like the future is here. You could see it, you could taste it, and we're so close. And then you've got guys like Tucker Carlson who are really standing in the way. It's a shame.
Well said.
Peloton recalling all of its treadmills amid concerns that they can be unsafe for small children and pets. Peloton CEO John Foley issued an apology for how the company handled the response to the initial request from the feds that the Tread Plus be recalled after reports of dozens of injuries and at least one death, saying that he should have acted more quickly. Owners of Peloton Tread or Tread Plus products are advised to stop using them and then contact the company for a refund.
How do you even return a treadmill? Doesn't it take like 10 guys to get the thing into your house?
Yeah, how does it work? I don't know.
I don't know. So actually, I was interested in the question I think either you or I posed the last time we talked about Peloton, about which the question was, why is this treadmill any different from the other ones on the market in terms of safety? So I went into a deep hole yesterday in these like fitness message boards, and it's really interesting. It turns out these Peloton treadmills have this one big design flaw. So they don't have guards on the front or the back of the treads. So if you can sort of picture a typical treadmill like that you would see at the gym, it's kind of like boxy, right? Because they have these plastic covers that go over the part in the front and the back where the treads go under the thing, if you can sort of picture what I'm saying. Peloton doesn't have those, right? It's just sort of this like circular tread, presumably for aesthetic reasons. I mean, it looks prettier, right? So in some of these forums, I saw this amazing video. I wish I could find it. Somebody they put the Peloton treadmill on like the fast, whatever. And they rolled a yoga ball at the back of it, and it immediately got caught under the tread, and then it lifted the whole treadmill up, right? You sort of picture what I'm saying here. So so I was sort of like, I was like, are they just picking on Peloton here? But it sounds like they really messed up in creating these products from a safety perspective.
That's really interesting. The Peloton treadmills always seem to be a bit higher than other treadmills.
I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In case you're wondering, shares of Peloton, the trendy fitness equipment maker, fell 15% on the news of that recall, and that stock is actually down about 50% on the year after soaring in 2020. That's either a buying opportunity or this. I don't know. I don't know what you make of that. Okay, but I will say, as a Peloton convert, it's hard. There's something to it. I'm not bearish on Peloton solely because I use it and I'm kind of addicted to it.
That's huge.
They've got great classes, right? And you, additionally, once you're in their ecosystem, like once you have the bike or the tread, I'm assuming they're going to make some design changes and put it back on the market. It's $40 a month, where you're paying a charge. They're collecting money from you. And even if
the idea is you're not going to the gym, so you're not spending money on a gym membership, right?
Right, and I mean, look, I could imagine a world where if you've already paid for your Peloton which is the big cost of it, where that you would still use Peloton, and if you wanted to do classes in person, you would do that as well.
Right.
So I don't know. I still think that I'm not, like I said, I'm not totally bearish on Peloton, but I offer zero stock advice. So I talk more about it just as a consumer product and not in terms of shares. Okay, Carlo, let's turn to the new space race. Elon Musk's SpaceX just had a big milestone. The rocket company successfully landed a prototype of the spaceship that it hopes to one day use to send astronauts to the moon for the first time without exploding. It's the SN-15 Starship. It launched from Texas, taking a brief flight and touching down in one piece.
Very, very exciting. These videos, I have to say, watching them, it is remarkable, just from an engineering perspective, how they can send these things up and then land them, even if they do end up exploding. But this one didn't, so this is a big deal. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos' rocket company Blue Origin, they have a date for their first suborbital sightseeing flight, July 20th. That's coming up. They're going to launch a crew aboard what they're calling the New Shepard rocket and capsule on that date. One seat is being auctioned online to the public. The rest of the seats are presumably going to be taken by company personnel, leading to the big question: is Jeff Bezos going to be on that flight? I don't know. That's an interesting bet there. I certainly wouldn't want to be the first guy, but maybe he is. So that's happening before SpaceX's planned fall launch for its first all-civilian flight. So there's a lot of different things going on in this little world that are starting to happen here. So Blue Origin's trip takes 11 minutes. They basically just send you up and you sort of float for a couple minutes and then you come back down. The SpaceX crew actually goes orbital and they're going to stay in flight for several days. So that's the one. I mean, if I had the money to burn on this, I guess that's the one that I would be spending my hard-earned money on. $250,000 for 11 minutes. I don't care what you're doing in those 11 minutes. That's a lot of money.
Look, now that Jeff Bezos sounds like he's going to be devoting a lot more time to Blue Origin now that he's stepping down as Amazon CEO. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this race tighten between Blue Origin and SpaceX, because SpaceX has really taken the lead.
Yeah, for sure. And SpaceX, I mean, Blue Origin right now is really about tourism. SpaceX is about actually sending people, like you said, to the moon and then eventually to Mars.
And finally, Game of Thrones fans got a treat when HBO released the first photos from the set of the prequel series that's currently in production, House of the Dragon. It's set a few hundred years before the events of Game of Thrones, and it tells the story of the House Targaryen and the Targaryen Civil War that became known as the Dance of the Dragons. The series is set to hit HBO Max sometime next year.
Do you see these pictures?
I have it. Are they cool?
Yeah, they look cool. I mean, I'm not really a Game of Thrones person, but I know you are, so I thought you'd be more jazzed about them.
No? I'm not jazzed about any prequel or sequel to anything,
really? Yeah.
Ever.
That's an interesting piece of Jill Wagner trivia. It is funny about Game of Thrones, though. It hasn't become this big, it was really culturally influential, obviously, when it was airing. We talked about it all the time, but it hasn't been since. And I don't know if that's just because they sort of botched the finale so badly. But think about it, right? In the pandemic, how many times have you heard people talking about how they've been rewatching The Sopranos or Breaking Bad or Mad Men or The Wire or Sex and the City, right? But I haven't heard anyone being like, I've really been, getting back into Game of Thrones. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
You make a great point. I think maybe it is because of the last season left a bad taste in people's mouths. But now that we mention it, I actually might rewatch it. It is so good. You need to watch that.
I know. I don't really like that kind of fantasy stuff, but it's on the list.
Either do I, okay? And there is something about this show. Okay, everybody, we're going to leave it there. That is what you need to know for Thursday, May 6th.
See you guys tomorrow.